If you're planning AI projects or software initiatives at an enterprise right now, you've got a lot of options to help you plan. Claude, Cursor, ChatGPT, Jira, Monday, they're all potential options. So more than ever today, it's confusing to know which tool to use for what. And after working with hundreds of enterprise teams, I've seen that the planning phase is still the biggest bottleneck most organizations face, mostly because they're using the wrong tools. So in this video, I'm going to break down which tools are genuinely helpful when it comes to enterprise planning, what each of them does well, where they tend to fall short, and what the teams that are getting AI implementations right are doing differently than most others. Let's get into it. Right now, 95% of enterprise AI projects are failing. And the reason isn't that the technology doesn't work. It's the planning hasn't evolved to match the complexity of the projects being planned today. To understand why, think about what actually happens when a new initiative gets kicked off at an enterprise today. Someone starts a spreadsheet or a Notion doc or a SharePoint folder that turns into a kickoff meeting, which turns into a follow-up meeting to cover what the first one might have missed. And stakeholders get pulled in one by one, usually whoever comes to mind first or whoever is easiest to schedule. And requirements end up reflecting whoever happened to be in the room, which is rarely everyone who should have been in the room. And the problem with this approach is that every initiative is unique, different from the last one. It touches different business units, different systems, different customer segments, different compliance requirements. There's no spreadsheet or Notion doc that can account for all of those differences, unique challenges. And no individual has the cognitive capacity to manually track every dependency, every stakeholder, every unknown across a project that's complex. So what happens downstream is predictable. You get into execution and start hearing from across the organization things like, who signed off on this? No one told me about this. This doesn't meet our compliance standard. This conflicts with a policy in that system. Every one of these is a planning failure that showed up late. And late's expensive, which is why the numbers look the way they do. By the time work actually starts, 50% of projects already have the wrong requirements, and 85% had the wrong team members involved from the beginning. So as we go through each of these tools, the question to keep in mind is simple. Does the tool actually solve the problem in the planning phase, or does it assume the plan is already there? When it comes to tools like Cursor, Windsurf, and Claude, they've completely changed what's possible on the development side. Developers can build faster, ship better quality work, and make a bigger impact than they could 2 years ago. But that's where it gets complicated for enterprises. These tools are built to help you build things, not help you figure out what to build. If you feed them the wrong requirements, they'll execute on the wrong requirements very efficiently. If compliance steps in and stops a rollout month after months of development, these tools had nothing to do with preventing that. If the business unit won't adopt the solution because their needs weren't captured in the plan, that's not a coding problem. The speed these tools create in execution actually makes planning more important, not less. When you can build something in a fraction of the time, the cost of building the wrong thing goes up. And enterprises can't afford to guess. The projects and organizations are too complex. The dependencies are too deep. So as impressive as these tools are, they're designed for the development execution layer. Planning is a different problem entirely. A lot of teams are turning to ChatGPT and other Gen AI copilot tools to help them plan. And they do help. Research gets faster, documents get drafted quicker, you can think through the scope of something before committing to it. But the fundamental limitation with these tools is they only respond to what you prompt. If you forget to mention a system dependency, it won't surface one. If you don't know to ask about a compliance requirement, it won't bring it up. And the things you and your team miss aren't obvious. They're the things you didn't know to ask about in the first place, which means a tool that's waiting for you to prompt it won't catch them. Then there's the orchestration problem. Who are the stakeholders that need to be involved in this specific, unique project? In what order do they need to be engaged? What happens when context changes halfway through and you need to update the entire plan and reset context? Who approved what and when? None of this stuff gets managed by a chat tool. It can answer a question you ask it, but Keeping a complex multi-stakeholder plan coherent over time is a completely different job. And I want to be clear, these tools are genuinely useful for individual tasks. They just weren't designed to orchestrate a plan across the complex organization. Let's talk about project management platforms because they've come a long way. Jira, Monday, Asana, Rike, great at breaking work down into tasks, organizing teams, tracking assignments, and managing complex timelines. But all that assumes you already have a plan. These tools are built to take a project plan that was already put together and help you execute it. They can't tell you whether you have the right requirements. They can't surface the stakeholders you haven't thought to include. And they can't evaluate whether your initiative is actually aligned to a business goal. And if you try to use them upstream in the actual planning phase, things tend to go wrong pretty quickly. Every project is different with different systems, different business units, different constraints, different dependencies. There's no template approach that accounts for all that. And no one has the cognitive capacity to manage it all. And because these tools weren't built for planning, they become hard to scale, hard to collaborate across teams for planning, and hard to keep updated as context inevitably changes. They're the right tool once you have a solid project plan, but getting to that plan is a separate problem. So every tool we've covered so far solves a real issue, but none of them were built for what happens before everything else, which is figuring out what to build, why build it now, who needs to be involved, whether it's actually worth doing, uncovering what you're missing, mitigating risk, because you want to confidently hand a project plan off to execution. And that's exactly what Force Equals was built for. Force Equals is a multi-agent AI platform built specifically for enterprise planning. When you start a project, it assesses the complexity of the initiative and automatically investigates it across dozens of dimensions of planning based upon the unique project context. It surfaces the roles and subject matter experts you should be engaging, including ones you might not have thought to include. It identifies context gaps and questions it needs to ask different stakeholders to close those gaps and reach alignment. It automatically builds and maintains an executive summary and business case, and all the other specific presentations required to bring stakeholders up to speed as they enter the project. It identifies goals, maps dependencies, and tracks planning progress in real time. And it manages approvals for sign-off for accountability and traceability. And ultimately, as things change, the plan updates with it in real time, so you're never working off context that's outdated. What that means in practice is that the cognitive load that normally sits with 1, 2, or 3 people leading a planning cycle, and the cognitive load that sits across every stakeholder that needs to participate gets absorbed by the system. With Force Equals, planning just feels different. Before tools like this existed, if you wanted this level of planning depth, you were calling McKinsey or Bain, and that works, but it costs millions per initiative and takes months. It's not a solution you can run across hundreds of initiatives all at once, all the time. Force Equals is built to work at that level of depth across every initiative all the time at a fraction of the cost. And the people actually using it are saying it does in minutes what used to take their team hundreds of hours. That it goes deeper than generic LLMs and ChatGPT, specifically because it was built for planning in the enterprise and working across multiple stakeholders in an enterprise team instead of just general use for an individual or task. So if planning is still the bottleneck on your AI or software or business transformation initiatives, Force Equals is free to start. The link's at the top of the description. You can try it on a real project and see what it surfaces, experience how it maps out the stakeholders you should be involving, see the quality and alignment impact as Force Equals agents investigate your initiative across limitless dimensions based on the unique context of your individual projects. Regain hundreds of hours from automation and elimination of dozens and dozens of internal meetings. Never manually build or maintain a presentation, project, or project asset again. Identify and address the problems that would have shown up later in execution. Catch them before a single bit of code is written or before you hand it off to your execution team. So again, you can start by free by clicking link in the description. And if you want a full in-depth guide to enterprise planning as a whole, then check out this next video.